Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers Q&A. I am back from Sacramento. I made my flight just by a few minutes last night, so got about 11 hours of sleep. I am well rested, went to the gym, have been relaxing today, and looking forward to our live. As I put in the comments here, I did link to the stream. So if you guys want to come on and ask a question on camera, just please let's keep it respectful. Let's try not to ask anything that will get me in trouble with YouTube or with the Lakers. But I put it on there. So if you have that link, you can hop on. I will be, of course, answering super chats first, but and you could also ask a super chat and then come on to ask me it. But see you all starting to populate the stream. What's up, everybody? But yeah, I wanted to try this out, and I can keep sharing the link in the chat just so you guys, because I'm not quite sure how to pin it on StreamYard. I think there's a way to pin it via YouTube, but then if I open up the YouTube stream, the audio is going to get messed up. What is up, Jay Note? What is up, Rocco, Michael, Jonathan, Lowry, 1993, Rob Hader, Mario Rovira, Caruso signs extension with Thunder. Really good value and really continues to just not age well for the Lakers that they did not re-sign Alex Caruso. Fro Bad Bunny, Buha, L.A. Toddy 10. I'm just going to pop up some of these. What up, everybody? Paul says no trades this year from Mr. Pelinka. If we're saying 2024, you're probably right, but we'll see into 2025. Stonks RUS moved to Rumble. I've considered expanding to other platforms. I think for now I'm going to keep it to YouTube, but that is something to I will keep in mind. What's up, Adam? L.A. DJ Mister. All right, let's get into the questions here. And again, I posted earlier in the chat if you guys want to ask a live question on camera. DJ Mister, any update on injuries? No, but the Lakers are having shoot around tomorrow, so potentially JJ will not be talking. But in terms of seeing guys going through stuff, we'll have that visual, and then also the possibility of talking to guys. The injury report should be coming out, I believe, at 5 p.m. Pacific time today. So that's something I'll also be monitoring. And if guys are cleared, then we can talk to them at shoot around. For Ifu, you think the Jonas buzz is real? I do think it's real, but I've said that the one thing that I'm a little skeptical with it is that we've seen how many guys be like closely tied to the Lakers and then those deals ultimately not come to fruition. In terms of, I think of Bojan Bogdanovic, Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, DeJounte Murray, Zach LaVine, Kyrie Irving. Like there's been several trades that have gotten close or gotten a lot of buzz, been talked about a lot in league circles, and then have ultimately gone nowhere. So I think that the Jonas one I would put, especially because the asking price is he's making less than $10 million this season, and it seems like it won't cost a first round pick the way it potentially could have maybe earlier or what. Like that to me makes it a bit more real. I think the price is there, and there was the previous interest obviously with LeBron going back to the summer, but I don't think he solves ultimately what they need him to solve, and that's where I think if the Lakers are being pragmatic, they don't do this trade and they go get someone else that's a better defender. Super chat from Matthew. Hey, Jovan, any updates on my boy, Miles Turner? Thank you for the super chat, Matthew. No updates yet to report on with Miles Turner, but I am going to be tracking all the trade stuff and continuing to report on that and keep you guys in the loop. But I have not heard anything on Miles Turner or any real substantive change with Indiana. If you look at it, I will pull it up right now. Indiana, they are 8th in the East, which it really, if you like, they're 4 games back of Orlando at number 4, and that sounds like a lot, but it feels like in the East, if you go on a 3-game, like Indiana's gone on a 3-game win streak, and it really turned their season around. They're 5-5 over the past 10, so I would not be surprised if they end up back in that like 5-6 mix at some point, or on that borderline. So feels like for now they're like the one thing with Indiana too, and although Utah used to kind of be like this, and then they've since pivoted, but Indiana is a team that just never really tanks. If you look at their history, Indiana's always been like at worst like a high 20s win team. So like they've certainly had bad seasons, they've had injury riddled seasons, but Indiana has just been one of those franchises that doesn't like to tank and tear things down. So I'm sure if the Lakers or another suitor blew them away for the price of Miles Turner, that they'd at least have to consider it. But I would assume that would have to be 2 first-round picks, and that's a pretty hefty price to pay for a Miles Turner. That's your one at bat at really improving the roster. Like maybe you can use a swap or some seconds to go get someone else, but depending on who they'd want to match salary, and then the Lakers using those 2 picks, like that is your real big swing at improving the roster. And look, I think Miles Turner is good. I think he'd be a pretty good fit. And maybe the price is even lower because he's had a little bit of a down season. But for right now, I have not heard anything as to him actually being potentially available. Jeremy Jaswinski, off topic JB, but how often you get those fades? Your hair is always looking on point, mate. My schedule for haircuts is about 2 to 3 weeks. It can be tough. I try to schedule it out and like look at the calendar. It can be tough sometimes, both with my schedule and my barber schedule, to align it. So sometimes it ends up being a little bit longer, but especially now that I'm going on camera almost every single day, I do like to keep the haircuts happening regularly. So fades, I do try and do it about every 2.5 weeks, but sometimes 3 on the longer side. I see we have someone in here. Is it Todi 10? About to add you to the stage. What up, man? How's it going?
Hey, John. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm a
What's your
Bulgarian
name?
guy, so part of
Bulgarian.
the
Okay.
voice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you in Bulgaria right now?
Yeah, I'm in Bulgaria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's 2 in the evening, in the night.
Okay. 2 a.m.
So 2 a.m. So Lakers games are always 5 a.m. and I'm staying all night to watch them. But
okay, true fan.
Yeah, but I'm hardly on your lives because I'm so tired, and then go back and watch them again.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, big fan of the show, very much. Can I share you a few thoughts? I don't have a question maybe, but
Sure.
yeah, what I think is that Lakers for me are very close to be contending, to be a real contender.
Mm-hmm.
They're missing a piece, but there is not a trade there that can make them better than OKC or Boston, or even in their level. But still, to be one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the league is something that it's worth taking a risk, because there always can be an injury or matchup. Even in matchup, I don't think OKC in 7-game series, I don't think it's impossible if they make a trade. But it's obvious that the team is not good enough, and they have the assets. And yeah, if this year they don't do it, I think Pelinka has failed LeBron and AD, because they're still playing at very high level.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for one, I think there's not a trade that I've seen, at least in terms of like a potential trade target, that gets them on that OKC Boston level. I think they have to make two trades. I think, realistically, and it's probably one trade where you're using one or two picks, and then a second trade where you're using multiple second round picks, maybe a swap depending on who the player is. So I think for them to really go for it, they got to make two trades, and they got to use at least one first round pick, if not more. But to your point, like I think Cleveland's looked really good. Like I think OKC and Boston are probably on their own tier. I would even probably put Boston on its own tier, where I think even with a major injury, I still think they arguably could be the best team in the league win it all. OKC might be right there as like the number 2 team, and then Cleveland's probably number 3 for me. But aside from that, I think they could compete with New York, Dallas, Denver, Houston, Memphis. Like I think they could get onto the level of all those teams, if not potentially higher than all those teams, with the right couple moves. So I'm with you. I think, and even it doesn't sound as sexy to be like, well, let's be the 4th best team in the league, but 2 of those teams are in the East, and 2 of those teams are gonna have to face off.
Yeah, that's my point.
So if they can be the 2nd best team in the West, all you need is OKC. Someone gets an injury, or maybe they lose. Like I think Dallas is a tough matchup. That's probably like a 6 or 7 game series for them. So like maybe those 2 teams match up and play each other on the other side, right? So I think, to your point, like that's why you go for it. I don't think there's a move that's going to make them the clear favorite. And of course, that's like, if you're really going for it, if you're trying to do that, like that's the goal. But I don't see that really out there. But if you can be even the 3rd or 4th best team in the league and position yourselves there, you have a good shot, if things break right, to at least make the conference finals, if not potentially go further.
Yeah, that's the point, because it's very difficult to be the best team. You can be the best team 1 or 2 years in 10. So you can't be the best team every year, but not every time the best team wins. So that's the difference between the East and the West. For me, the West is way tougher and deeper, but the top end, I'm not sure, because in the East, like Boston, Knicks, and Cleveland, for me, if you need to go through all of them, it's way harder than in the West. In the West, it's OKC, and we know Denver is bad matchup for us, but maybe for the first time we go on the other bracket, and last thing, if I can say, I don't want to get you in trouble, but I find it very, very hard. Why the USA media, because I follow all of them, nobody puts pressure on Pelinka, and for me it's very strange, because they always say Lakers are not good enough. But why are they not good enough when they have AD and LeBron playing at that level? And Austin Reaves, maybe he's not ready to be the 3rd best player on championship team, but he's very nice starter. And nobody says anything. Everything goes to LeBron. Like the Russ trade, everyone says it's LeBron's fault. Okay, LeBron wanted Russ. Okay, but LeBron also wanted AD, and he doesn't get credit for AD. He also wanted Kyrie. They didn't get him. He wanted Ty Lue. They didn't get him. But he gets the heat for the Russ trade. And okay, Russ trade, it was very bad, but it's been so many years. They needed to recover better than that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is interesting how, like, I think in the past there's been some level of, I've talked about it, like the scapegoating with Russ and his whole contract and that situation, and that was for a couple seasons, and then so there's kind of been some convenient narratives where the first year after the title, arguably they have a better roster, and then AD gets injured, LeBron gets injured, AD gets injured again against the Suns, so that there's kind of a built-in almost excuse there. Next year they trade for Russ, and then everything goes off the rails, but you could point to the supporting cast. They had a bunch of old aging guys. The fit wasn't great. But then the next year, they are trying to trade him. They eventually trade him. They go on the run to the conference finals. And then last season, all the fingers, got pointed at Darvin Ham basically for everything that went wrong. And then this year, that there's not really, it's not as clear of a scapegoat. And I think ultimately, depending on what they do over the next,
it's Pelinka. It's obvious.
I mean, it's going to be Pelinka. I think it is going to be Pelinka. That's the way this is trending. And as it, to your point, like it was understandable maybe a year or two post Russ kind of not having the best roster, not getting out of that mess, but it's taken several years now, and they clearly
it's too long. And every year we say it's last year of LeBron. We don't want, but he said that a few years ago that they were not trading picks because we don't have much left of LeBron, but we already had like maybe 3 or 4 more years than most of us expected at this level. And also he actually gets credit for the Russ trade and getting Duo, and why he gets credit when they could have got Turner and Buddy Hield. I know you love Turner, and they actually got Duo, who they're trying to trade for 2 years straight. Vando, who I love, but he's not healthy, never, and Beasley, who was there for a few months. So actually, the trade getting out of Russ was bad also because he didn't get anyone good. I mean, Russell, I like him. I don't want to say he's not a good player. He's a good player, maybe not a winning player in the playoffs. Maybe he got some value of Duo because of the regular season, but other than that, actually the trade that he got out of Russ wasn't good either.
Yeah. No, you bring up fair criticisms and all fair points. I will say we got another person in here ready to ask a question. We got a couple super chats, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you watching at 2 a.m. That is a true fandom, getting up at 5 to watch Laker games. True fan right here. So
no, not getting up. I'm not going down.
Yeah, well, shout out to Bulgaria in the house here. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All the best, and keep up the good work, Ben.
Thank you. All right, we got Darius here. What's up, Darius?
Hey, how you doing, Jovan? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for hopping on here to ask a question.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I think what our brethren there was speaking absolute facts, and the consistencies with the issues that we're experiencing with putting together this roster is Pelinka. It is the misutilization of our assets and just putting things in the wrong places and putting together rosters that don't particularly fit all that well. But my question is, I know we've spoke about it many a times. You spoke about it many a times. I watch all your content all the time.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. We sincerely appreciate what you do. But realistically speaking, it feels like there's no way back to contention unless there's like a gift from the gods, like Pau Gasol. I don't see it. So you tell me, do you really think there is a deal back to contention for these 2 first-round picks that we have?
I think so. I'm going to be doing a Buha's Block episode on ranking my top 10 realistic trade targets. I think a potentially realistic starting spot that is going to require both first-round picks and likely multiple seconds, if not potentially a swap or 2, would be going out and getting Cam Johnson and Walker Kessler. And I think Cam's salary is a little tricky because he's making 23 technically, but with his incentives, it makes his contract up to 27. So the Lakers would have to get to at least 27, if not a little bit higher, just to make sure they're not taking back more money. But then the issue is the outgoing salary only counts as 23 for Brooklyn. So if the Lakers send back, let's just say 28 million and they're getting back 27 from Brooklyn, that's a +5 that Brooklyn is taking back in terms of salary in millions. And they are about $3.5 million under the luxury tax and about 5.5 under the first apron. So it gets tricky on Brooklyn's end. So a Cam Johnson trade would almost certainly have to have a third team in it, or it would require Brooklyn to do a separate trade first that gets them shed some additional salary and gets them a little bit more wiggle room where they could then take back that extra money. So, but I think to get to, like, I think Cam Johnson as with the season he's having as the starting front court guy, and if you go AD, LeBron, Cam Johnson, Max, Austin, and your bench is Kessler. I would have to. I mean, you could probably keep one of Gabe or D'Lo in this case. You probably have to pick between Rui and D. Like, they'd probably prefer D'Lo. I would assume, they as in Brooklyn. So your bench then could be something like Kessler, Gabe, Rui, Vando if he ever comes back, and then Cam as like the 10th guy. And I think that's a better two-way rotation on both sides of the ball. Now, is that to the previous point, is there a trade that gets you on the Boston OKC level? I don't see it, but can that get you to a place where you can beat Houston, Memphis, Denver, Dallas, anyone else you want to throw in there? I think potentially. So then, I mean, it's then it comes down to matchups and health and like what that path ultimately looks like. So I guess I don't see a trade that's going to make them a clear favorite. I don't see the Pau Gasol trade, right? But really, like, there's no, because even looking at the landscape, there's not really like an underutilized, like, disgruntled star that's gonna all of a sudden, like, Pau Gasol. There's a lot of circumstances that like aligned with, giving Kobe that second star, giving him that big man partner, and I don't see that player out there right now. Also, like, the landscape has changed in terms of several CBAs have passed, and it's much harder to do trades now, and the cost for stars. But I mean, it's tricky. They're in a tough spot, but I think already, like, I would say, this has been a roller coaster of a season, and they're 5th in the West. And if they win the Orlando game, win the Atlanta game, they're like right there, borderline 4th in the West. And I think we're having maybe a slightly different conversation of like, this team's almost already there without being healthy, without making any moves. So now, like, go plug in a couple holes. And again, like with LeBron and AD in any playoff series, I still contend gives you a shot against just about anybody outside of maybe Boston. I think Boston is at a different level, that they probably need a couple of injuries to be beaten, in my opinion. But
no, I definitely agree. I think with I'm sorry, that's my son. Anyway, I definitely agree with the success that we had and the inconsistencies and the swings that we've had. I think we definitely have a shot at potentially kind of mixing it up in the first round with the team out west. But I think it's going to require something a bit more than trades can really provide us at this point. And I just think it takes just a bit more buy-in, because even with given the successes that JJ has had thus far, there are certain outliers and certain details about last year that kind of felt a little better. For example, I was digging into it, and I kind of did like a blind comparison between, during the games they were starting with D'Lo and Austin. D'Lo and Austin were better with Darvin, even with all his deficiencies as an offensive coach. D'Lo and Austin were better with Darvin, and maybe that's because there was more time that had passed, and maybe Darvin just gave him the rope to go out there and just play ball. January on, but they were compatible. It worked, and I'm just waiting to see if we can pivot back to that. I do like Max in the starting lineup. I love him as a point of attack defender. I love his energy. I like that he competes, and we need a lot more of that. But I'm still waiting to see if we can kind of catch a groove and maybe start seeing a bit more consistencies from D'Lo, and maybe he's stepping into, 6 man of the year type conversations. If we can find a way to get that 40%, facilitator pull up jump shooter, because we don't have a lot of that. So
Yeah, the D'Lo, and I still haven't got a great answer with this, but like the shooting has been odd, just coming off of the shooting year he had last year of setting the Lakers, all time single season 3-point record, and of course he was playing more. So I'm not saying from like a volume perspective it would be on par with that, but like he's obviously not shot the ball the same way, and it feels like his footwork's been a little weird. His legs have kind of been kicking out a bit differently. Like it hasn't, feels like he's not as set as he maybe was. But to your point, like I think so. The one thing I argued over the summer that I will give them credit for is it was kind of trending toward them inevitably trading D'Lo at some point, and it seems like he's the most likely guy to be traded, him or Gabe, I guess, depending on how teams view Gabe's contract, because D'Lo isn't expiring. But I was like, they need to get to a point where they're not as reliant on him offensively, because my fear was if you are starting him, playing him 30 plus minutes a night, and then game 55, you trade him, then all of a sudden you're now are reshuffling the starting lineup. You're taking a big piece out of your team, and you have to figure out a way to now function offensively. So that's where I said I felt it made more sense to move him to the bench, minimize his importance to the team, and you could always rely on him more as the season progresses if you end up keeping him. But it's harder to make him such an integral piece. And we've seen they haven't been reliant on him as much as last season. Like when he plays really well, he closes, he has big games, and he helps them win. When he doesn't, they've leaned more toward Max or more toward Gabe or Cam or whatever, and like kind of had that defensive backcourt guy next to Austin. So I think they've actually balanced it better. I do think that like the good version of D'Lo, of course, raises this team's ceiling, and that's kind of like the tricky spot that they're in. It's just how do you get that more consistently? Because I think there's been like I've said this with D'Lo before, but I feel like you can kind of tell in the first half of a game. Like there will be exceptions, but for the most part, you can kind of tell in like the first half, is this a good D'Lo game or is this a bad D'Lo game? And again, occasionally he'll have a hot start and maybe not have a good second half, or he'll have a slow start, have a good second half. But like you typically get the vibe with him. I feel like he's a very like vibe based player, and I think that the nights where he hasn't had it as much, that they've reduced his role. And a night like the second Sacramento night, I thought he was really good and he competed well defensively. They closed with him. He was their second leading scorer. So to your point, like, yeah, they got to figure it out. I'm with you. I think certain things could be better, but I think to your point about the buy-in, though, the defense to me has been something that I've been really encouraged by, because I don't think this is a good group defensively. And for them to have this little stretch here of being the league's best defense over 5 games, like only 5 games, but that to me has shown a level of buy-in.
You absolutely take it.
That they didn't show earlier in the season. I am going to, I got a few super chats here that I need to get to, but I appreciate you hopping on, asking a question. And I appreciate you said you watch every stream, every video. So I thank you, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Hey, likewise, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I know there are a few super chats that I have not gotten to yet. But as you guys just saw, we tried it out for a couple people, and I think it went well. Maybe I'll put a little bit of a timer to like 3 to 5 minutes per person, so we're not getting away from the chat too long. But I think so far it's gone pretty well. First super chat from Pieter K. Jovan, how we feeling? Merry early Christmas, gang. I'm feeling better. I got some rest last night. I'm not as hungover as I was yesterday. Voice is still a little raspy, but I appreciate you for the super chat. Super chat from Norma. Happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa to all. Thank you. Gracias. Hvala. Danke for all your support for Jovan. Let's help him end the year with 20K subs. Please subscribe. It's free. Like, share, and comment. Thanks. I'm on the road to 20K. That is the goal for the end of the year. I got about 9 days left to get there. We will see. Thank you, Norma. Shibugen, is there any genuine indication, internal or external, that the front office actually cares? Their behavior doesn't suggest that they do. I would say yes. Internally, yes. I know that they're aware of the chatter and the criticism, and there is care. I think externally, the messaging could be handled better and could have been handled better to this point. And ultimately, it's going to come down to actions, right? Because I've said that before of like, they can say they believe in this group, they can say X, Y, Z, and it's going to come down to you have not made a trade in the past 3 trade cycles. You're now on your 4th trade cycle. It's time to make a trade. And really, it's time to make 2. And really, it's time to invest some draft capital in this group. So I would say, to me, regardless of whether they care or not, I think it just comes down to, do they do something about it? Because you could also like not really care, but still go out and make a trade. But I would say internally, based on my understanding, my conversations, yes, they do care. I think, they've wanted to see what this group was going to do. And I think at this point, the group is putting some pressure on them. Tori 10, sorry, I was nervous. My English is better usually. Plus, not getting Jonas Valanciunas for the LeBron discount and not trading for him is another point confidence. So, Tori wanted, thank you for coming on, and you wanted to voice another complaint after about the Valanciunas situation. And then another super chat here from Kevin Brown. Any chance Indiana moves Miles Turner? Would be catastrophic if they lost him for nothing in the offseason. So I did answer a Miles Turner question earlier, but I'm going to assume you did not catch that. No, I have not heard any updates. I know, obviously, Lakers got to the 1 yard line with Indiana ahead of the 2022-23 season, before they eventually remade the team at the 2023 trade deadline, but they got close on Russ for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. They got to the ownership level, as we reported on at The Athletic, and ultimately didn't go through. So LA's been tied to Miles Turner for years. He's been someone that they've been very high on. I have not. Just went through it. Like, Indiana's 8th in the East. They're on a 3-game win streak. That they're momentarily turning things around. Indiana's also a franchise that doesn't really believe in tanking. If you look at their history, they've often had like these high 20s to low 30s seasons and above. Like they typically are at least like decent or like below average, but not just like 15 wins. We're tanking this season. So my one fear is I don't know if Indiana would be able to stomach a full teardown and just sell off all their parts. At the same time, if the Lakers put 2 first-round picks on the table for Miles Turner, I think they have to strongly consider that. So I think it comes down to the price that might be a little bit too high for me for Miles Turner, but also he's had a little bit of a down year, so maybe the price is a little bit lower. Maybe if it's like a first and a swap, a swap and a second or something, Indiana has to consider it. But I've not heard of him as like a legitimate candidate. As a reminder, if you want to hop on the stream and ask a question, I put the link. I will post the link again. 1 second. Just posted the link in the stream if you guys want to hop on and ask a question. Dark Galaxy, hey Jovan, considering AC signed a $20 million per year contract, do you think Reaves will go for roughly $25 million a year for his next contract? Not sure Lakers will pay due to cheapness. Yes, I do think so. I got asked a few weeks ago, I think, about Austin's contract. I got aggregated at saying $375 million, which was not what I said. If I like Austin clearly as a player, but I would be pretty surprised if he got a $375 million deal. I said 3 years, $75 million, which would be about $25 million a year. I think that's probably on the low. Like I see Austin probably going in that $25 to $30 million range per year, and I don't know. So I don't know if it's going to be cheapness necessarily from the Lakers of why Austin doesn't stay potentially, but it would more so be what is the next era of Lakers basketball look like when Austin could hit free agency in 2026. And at that point, are they still going for it? Like, is LeBron still playing? Are they still trying to be a competitive team, or are they in like a transitional phase, a rebuilding phase? And does having a role player at a high role player cost makes sense for them? So of course you could always re-sign Austin and then just try and flip him later on. But I think my concern for Austin longer term being a Laker would more so stem from not being sure what the team looks like in 2026. Because again, AD is going to be 33, almost 34. LeBron's going to be 41, almost 42. Like that's a summer that I could see them. I mean, that, like LeBron could be retired by then, and then that could be a transitional offseason where maybe they trade AD or just kind of go through a reshuffling on the roster and look more toward asset accumulation, younger players. Austin will be, I think, 27, 28 at that point. So he'll be right in his prime, but I don't know if he would make as much sense depending on the direction of the team at that point. Again, I think you could always resign him and just flip him, but we'll see if they feel the same. All right, we got a couple people in here, so I'm going to go with Tony Vega first. Tony, how you doing?
How's it going?
Thanks
cool
for
format. Cool format, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do have a question. When it comes to like Vando, like Christian Wood, are they high on them in terms of retention, or are they looking for like more so replacements? Because like sometimes I feel like their presence is much needed, and when you look at trades, you kind of want to kind of get like a Christian Wood, kind of get something similar, or a Jared Vanderbilt, but because of the whole injury situation, like are they holding out or are they looking to move them?
I think my understanding is so with Vando, it's a little tricky because of the injury situation, and you now have him barely playing for going on 2 seasons now, and his contract extension just kicked in, so he's got 3 more years after this year. So it's not like an egregious salary where it's going to be like crippling your cap sheet, but I think as the Lakers can attest to the other side of it, like it's you got to be careful trading for an injured player, even if you like the player, you like the contract, whatever. So I think Vando's value is probably the least clear in terms of maybe there's some team that could talk themselves into like him being a depressed asset that at some point could have value in the future, and that they're confident about him rehabbing, getting healthy, maybe looking ahead for like next season, and they could take a gamble on him. But that's the one that's probably the hardest to move, I would say, by a decent amount compared to D'Lo, Gabe, Rui, if we're looking at like those mid-sized salaries that they'd probably try to trade. I also think you could argue Vando has more value to the Lakers than he probably would for almost any other team, just because they need that type of guy. And I just think at this point that they've kind of committed to him with the extension and trying to rehab him and whatnot, that I think it almost might just make more sense just to keep, like, obviously if you can flip him, I think you probably have to, but it might just make more sense to if you can't, just hope that he comes back and can be productive, because a healthy Vando could obviously help this group. Like they don't really have a guy who does quite exactly what he does. As for Christian Wood, I think they would throw him in a deal today to get something done, especially when looking at like if you're looking at the minimum salary guys that they would need to put in to make a potential deal work, depending on who else is in it. I mean, Cam has been solid as a bench defensive wing. Jackson has outperformed his minimum contract when healthy. Obviously, he's dealing with the ankle injury. Maxwell Lewis is a guy that they traded for and were high on. I think he's shown some flashes in the G League, but not at the NBA level yet. Then JHS, I think they're going to try and move as well. It'd be like him and Christian is probably the 2 most likely. And then Bronny, they're not going to trade. So really, it's like if you're looking at, it's Gabe Vincent plus a minimum guy to like match Dorian Finney-Smith with Brooklyn, it's probably going to be Christian Wood. I think they'd prefer to move him rather than a Jackson Hayes or a Cam Reddish. So and Christian, again, like we were told, he's progressing, but that seems to be consistent theme of, we'll see. I've said before multiple times, like I'm at the point where I want to see guys actually checking into the game or available at least. Even available. Going back to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like Christian and Vando were cleared and then they didn't play. So I want to see the guy checking into the game, and then I'll be like, all right, that guy's back. Agreed.
I think minimum being available is kind of a requirement at this point. But just a follow up question though, like with what you were talking about, like the 2026, if they decide like if LeBron's not here, or 2027, like are we looking at, in your opinion, because like personally I kind of feel like they should tank at some point, and tank I mean like go through the draft, like 2027 it's a top 4 like protection at that point. They have 2026, they have 2029 if they don't trade it. So yeah. Just saying, like, do you see this team going back to what they did after Kobe, like before LeBron, where it's like they were tanking, or are they gonna try to keep AD and try to build something with him? Like, because like the whole trade AD thing is kind of weird, because I kind of feel like he wants to retire there, but at the same time, for a structure in terms of building a next contender or something of the sorts, you kind of need to get the assets for AD, if that makes sense. So
yeah, so I think you're hitting on something that I've been trying to get across. Is there's been a lot of conversation about what to do with LeBron, what to do with AD. Should they, trade those guys? And like I've just tried to get the point across that, I mean, one, LeBron has a no trade clause, so LeBron is in control of his future. But two, the Lakers do pride themselves on being a star-friendly organization, and even with AD, I think looking toward the future, like Pete Zayas of Laker Film Room, I thought he laid out a pretty coherent theory of what he would do, of like go for it the next couple of years. LeBron probably retires after next season, and then trade AD for the best package possible, tear it down, get young guys picks, and try to rebuild from that point. I like that in theory. I just think we have to factor in, what does AD want? And if AD wants to remain a Laker and he wants to be part of the post-LeBron era and be part of that next group that finds the next guy to kind of be the face of the franchise, or kind of the next younger star, because obviously AD will be hitting his mid-30s at that point, I think the Lakers would likely honor that. So I don't see them just, and even looking at some of the teams that have the assets, it's like OKC, Houston, Utah actually kind of has a lot of assets. San Antonio, like those aren't the sexiest markets. And I don't know if AD is just going to want to go to like a small market team that, sure, maybe he can contend, but he also was previously in a small market, didn't really love that dynamic, and got out of it in New Orleans. So I think there's a lack of clarity as to like what the post-LeBron plan is currently. And part of that is like, what's going to happen with AD, and what does he want? Does he want to go somewhere and continue competing for championships? And if that's the most important thing for him, then obviously I think they will honor that. But if he wants to stay in LA, be a Laker, have this be where he finishes his career, I don't see the Lakers, even if that's the pragmatic thing would be to trade him, I don't see them burning him like that and taking that perception hit as being like a star-friendly organization. So I think it really comes down to what AD wants. And on that front, I don't have a great read on it. I would say it probably partly depends on like how the next year and a half goes too, of like, if they don't go for it and they're kind of just continue to be in this middle zone, maybe he finally gets frustrated and is like, you know what, I don't think this is the right situation. I want to go compete. I want to go elsewhere. If they go for it, then I think that earns some goodwill, and that's at least like, they did solid by me. They gave me the extension, and we went for it. We tried to end the LeBron AD era on a positive note. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't in terms of another championship, but then I think at that point, he probably wants to stay. So I think the next 18 months are going to have a huge say in terms of like what that looks like. What's the post-LeBron plan, but also how does AD feel? Because I think people leave that out and just look at it from a Lakers perspective, which I get because you're a fan of the team or whatever, but like AD has a big say here. And I don't think it's as simple as just like trade him to OKC which is basically NBA Siberia. No offense to anyone in OKC. I don't know if AD is going to go for that. I'll just say.
No, I appreciate and I do agree with you. Like that is one point about it, like nobody has asked that question to AD, or AD has never really indicated what his, like, if he wants to retire or what's his future look like with LeBron or after LeBron. So I do appreciate it. I don't have much questions, but I do appreciate this opportunity. It's
Appreciate
dope.
you, Tony.
It's dope.
Yeah. All right, we will get to Abdul Hakim. Is that how you say it?
Yo, yes, that's how you say
What's up, man?
I'm good, man. What's good?
Where are you coming from?
I'm calling from Nigeria.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
What time is it over there?
10 minutes to 2 a.m. right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. So late night gang.
Yeah,
nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my question is, the way Gabe and D'Lo have been playing lately, does that kind of like improve their trade value in case we need to trade them for future purposes?
Yeah. I think it does, but I don't think it. I don't think either one of them is at a level where it changes it like too much. So I would say for D'Lo, this is a whole other conversation, but like one thing I've tried to express is like D'Lo does not have a great perception around the league for various for how things went in Minnesota and Golden State and like just different situations. So I think when I have conversations with people outside of the Lakers, there tends to be a stigma or sort of a negative perception of D'Lo. And I don't know how much that's really changed this season. Like if anything, I think he's played in the aggregate, he's had a worse season than last year. Like the shooting has not been the same. The impact has not been the same. He still has been positive in terms of plus minus, but I think anyone trading for D'Lo, it's mostly looking at him as an expiring contract, 18.7 million expiring. With Gabe, I think at the salary that he's at making like 11-ish million, having the pedigree of being the starting guard on a team that went to the finals, and the way like Gabe is a two-way player. It's just that the shot has not been there for much of his Lakers tenure until like the last 10, 11 games. He's shooting in the mid 40s. So I think Gabe's a little bit like there are no negative perception or like concerns with Gabe as like his character or who he is on a team. He's clearly has like a really good reputation as like who he is as a guy across the league. It's really been the injuries and some of the inefficiency shooting struggles. So if I think Gabe has rehabbed his value the last couple of weeks a little bit. I think teams also want to see like a bigger sample size. So if Gabe continues to play like this until late January, then I think but then also I think at that point, maybe the Lakers consider keeping him and it ends up being like, okay, maybe if we're getting this version of Gabe, maybe he's actually a value on this contract. And then maybe we look at the big board a little differently. So I think both guys have certainly played better recently. I think D'Lo had a little bit of a dip there, but he's been on the rise, I would say, the last few games. But I think for him more so because he's an expiring, I think people are just looking at it from that, like, let's get the salary off our cap sheet and send it to the Lakers and then get this expiring. For Gabe, because he has another year, I think it's because the one thing, if you trade for D'Lo, you now have to deal with his free agency and like, what is he going to want? How does he view himself? Does he view himself as a starter? Does he view himself as a bench guy? He had wanted more money last summer and he obviously didn't get that. And that's why he opted in to go to the Lakers. So like, I think there's a little bit less certainty with that, where with Gabe, he's on the books for one more year. And I think he looks the part of like a solid bench guard. So I think that's my best read on the situation, but we'll haven't talked to some of the people I talked to in LA at games because they've been on the road the last week or so. So looking forward to doing that tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for answering the question, Jovan. Good luck in your endeavors in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for staying up. I appreciate it.
All right. No problem.
All right. Have a good one. All right, we got Big Major. Is big? Are you here, Big Major? I see you are muted and your camera's off. Okay, you're unmuted. We'll add you on. What's up?
Hey, how you doing, Jovan? Camera's off because it's dark where I am.
Okay, all good.
Yeah, I kind of peeled away from work a little bit to come up here and talk to you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, so the question that I have is, I know that there's reports that has come out that said that the Lakers favor depth over a third star.
Mm-hmm.
I'm under the impression that we should go get a third star, and I'm looking at LaVine. Do you think that there's any like secret rumblings about them trying to acquire him, but just saying that they're not really looking into him just to, curb him from going to another team? Or do you think? Yeah,
certainly possible. I will say that they did have some interest in him last year that I reported on, and ultimately, I think that the contract was a little too rich for them. I'm pulling it up right now. So he's making $43 million this year, $46 million next year, and this has been a running joke for me. But in 2026-27, he has a player option for $49 million, and I will break that news here that he will be opting in to that $49 million
absolutely
player option. So I think that the bigger issue for them is like, I've been on record. I'm not the biggest LaVine fan, and it's more so for the defense of just. I think anyone the Lakers add, because in general, I don't think this is like quite to a championship level defense in terms of the personnel. I think anyone they add needs to be at least like average to above average defensively, if not better. So that's my biggest issue with LaVine, but. The contract, like just to get to the contract, so he's at 43 with the Lakers at about 30,000 under the second apron. They cannot take back any additional money in a trade. So to get to that 43 million, D'Lo's at 18.7, Rui's at 17. That gets you to about just under 36.
35, yeah.
And then 35, 36. And then you could throw in. You throw in Max, which I don't think they would do, because I think they're going to want to keep Max, especially in this type of deal. And I guess you could throw in like JHS and Christian Wood to get close. That gets you about 42 to 43, or you could throw in Gabe, and now you're going above. And depending on maybe Chicago could throw in like a minimum guy to match it, or Chicago just takes back a little bit more money. I don't know their salary situation off the top of my head, but to give up, you could also give up Vando, but I don't, as I just mentioned with like trade value, I don't think people are exactly thrilled to take on 3 more years of Vando. So if you're giving up Gabe, Rui, and D'Lo, that's just a lot of rotation guys to give up. So let's go through it. Now you're looking at probably a starting lineup of, I would guess something like 80, LeBron, Max, Zach, Austin, and then your bench is, because you've traded Gabe, D'Lo, and Rui. Your bench is, you don't really have a backup guard, but it's Connect.
Yeah, Connect.
I don't know why I keep forgetting Connect. I was talking about the rotation earlier. I should have mentioned him, but so you have Connect.
Yeah.
I guess Vando when healthy.
Cam Reddish. If Cam Reddish is sure. Yeah.
And then Jackson.
Jackson Hayes.
Koloko, Christian Wood, if he's not part of that deal. So then you can do like a separate deal where, because I don't think you have to give up a first for Zach. So you're keeping both first. You could still do something like JHS and a first. And even if you want to throw in a second or whatever to make it a more competitive offer for like Walker Kessler. And all of a sudden, I like, so LaVine, like I think that the question comes down to like, is LaVine more valuable than D'Lo, Rui, and Gabe? And I think that's kind of that's a lot of depth in my opinion. I think he's clearly the best player of that group. I don't know if he's worth those 3, especially with the way Gabe has been playing recently. But
Yeah.
No, to your point though, I will say, I've said this a couple times. Like the Lakers move in silence, so I would not be surprised if whether it's LaVine, whether it's Brandon Ingram, like whether it's whoever, there's a chance like they all pull off a trade out of left field that we just don't see coming.
Yeah,
and that's where like
yeah.
the Valanciunas buzz. I've wondered, is it there may be too much buzz, and this ultimately is not going to be what happens. But I think your general point is correct in that certainly strong possibility they just make a trade that we do not see coming. I think LaVine, if he was making even like 5 to 10 million less, I think it'd be more realistic. But getting to that salary is because also you got to look at like Chicago. I don't know how many players they have under contract either, which I probably should know this because I get asked about LaVine a lot. But like they'd have to then figure out if they're taking back 2 extra players. If they're at 14, it's 1 extra player. But if they're at 15, then they got to figure out. And that's not like easy money to move. They're not going to like waive those guys. So it's pretty tricky to make a LaVine fit. It probably has to be a 3-team trade, honestly. And anytime you add in a third team, it gets trickier. So I think from a financial perspective, it's pretty tough to do LaVine. But again, to your point, I could see them doing something we don't expect.
Now, if we could get LaVine in, because I've heard LaVine and Vooch, that's a lot of money. I would love to have Vucevic on the team as a center over Valanciunas. But I
agree with that. Yeah.
I've heard LaVine and Torrey Craig, them throwing in Torrey Craig to kind of like a supplement for some of the depth that we're going to lose if we get that. And I'll take Torrey Craig just on his defense. He's not a big offensive guy, but he can go off at times. He's a little streaky, but he definitely has the defense to cover.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They're at 15 guys. So
okay.
It is a little tricky. But to your point, if you threw in Torrey Craig, he's making 2.8. So you could probably make the math work of Gabe, Rui, D'Lo for LaVine and Torrey Craig. The issue then is like, what do they do with that 16th guy? Do they waive somebody? Like the other thing is like the Bulls are historically cheap. That they're not necessarily looking to eat money. And then I've also talked about I've heard the Bulls and the Lakers have a weird relationship where we talk about the Lakers tax or like certain teams not liking the Lakers or wanting to deal with them. I think Chicago is high on that list. Yeah,
I agree. I bodyguard in the industry and just, so I'm, my job requires that I travel a lot. And just within circles, bodyguard and some of the NBA stars, NBA players. When I go to Chicago, I hear about it. They'll talk about everybody else but the Lakers. When you bring the Lakers up, it's like washing your mouth out with soap. So it's just like, it's crazy. But that's always been a weird dynamic since the 90s, as far back as I can remember. But man, I would love to have LaVine. And LaVine would love to come to the team. He would love to play for the Lakers. I'm pretty sure that if there was a situation whereby he could get himself here, he'd do that. I know there was a time that he could have went to Detroit. And there was like rumors coming up that, he kind of like, extended his injury or whatever, his injury situation, just so he wouldn't go. But in a situation like this, I think that, could he even restructure his contract? Could he restructure it to take less money to come to the Lakers if he wanted to, or if he could do that?
He could. I don't think it's a lot of money. I know like Gobert did it with Minnesota, that there was some goodwill there in terms of him wanting to stay there and make them more competitive. You could always do it. It's just pretty rare. Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate it. Love your show, man. I'm a big fan of yours.
I appreciate
keep up the good work, bro.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Sir. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
You too. All right. I do not see any super chats, so we are back in the chat. Did I miss something with the Kings? I see. Oh, are they losing to? They're playing what, Indiana today? Yeah. Wow. Okay, they're getting smacked by Indiana. So there you go for the Miles Turner people. Indiana's about to win their fourth fourth game in a row. Rolla, DFS plus Kessler. That's where I'm at. I would throw Cam Johnson in there, but like some combination of Kessler plus DFS, Cam Johnson, Bruce Brown. I think that's probably like the most realistic, best way to improve a couple of holes. Bob the Builder, and any chance we get KCP? I've been asked this before. I don't think so. Now I will say Orlando has a lot of injuries, obviously, and they've trucked through it. They're fourth in the East. If it got to a point where the season looked lost, maybe they try to sell some parts. Like I think KCP would probably cost a first round pick. I don't see him going below that, but I would be open to it if I'm the Lakers. I just, he's also regressed a little bit quietly. I don't think he's quite where he was a couple years ago, like during the title team. EJ, what do you think about John Collins? I'm not a big John Collins guy because I kind of view him as a tweener. So one, I've, as I said with one of my previous answers, like I try to view all this through like, is the person going to help defensively? And I think Collins is kind of in between as like a 4.5. I think like he can be a defensive playmaker, block some shots, but in general is not really a plus defender. Could he maybe be an average defender for the Lakers? And like if you're putting him next to LeBron and AD, sure. But I'm kind of like I'm of the mind of like if I'm the Lakers, I want more of either a wing or like a center who can protect the rim and slot AD at the 4. John Collins to me, I almost view as like in direct competition with LeBron and AD at like the 4-5. Honestly, similar to Rui a little bit of like, are you forcing this guy to maybe play a position that they're not really like, are you almost slotting him more at the 3 and saying, go guard some of these wings? And like, I think that's almost playing him out of position. So for that reason, like now offensively, I think he could help. And I think there's some clear value with his finishing, with his rolling. He's improved as a shooter. Like I think I could see the offensive fit certainly, but he is making over 20 million. I want to say, and matching that gets a little tricky. But I don't think. I think they need a big 6'11" to 7 foot ish backup 5 rim protector, and then I also think they need like a two-way wing. I think John Collins is kind of in between both of those position designations. So for that reason, I'm out. I feel like a game show host or judge saying that. Okay, we got a super chat here from Kevin Brown. Thank you for the super chat. If we go after Ingram or Miles Turner, could the Nets get involved? Could New Orleans or Indiana take back some combination of Cam Johnson, DFS, and Sharp? Certainly. I mean, you could always extend it. I would have to play with the trade machine and look at what that looks like. One thing, as I noted earlier with Cam Johnson, is he's got a quirk with his salary where the outgoing salary is going to be about $23 million from Brooklyn's side, but the incoming salary to a team is going to be about $27 million. So you got a $4 million gap there, and getting that to work is a little tricky because Brooklyn is about $3.5 million under the luxury tax and about $5.5 million under the first apron. So it's a little tricky with Cam Johnson in terms of because of his incentives in his contract. You probably need a third team for Cam Johnson, but that would be if he's going to the Lakers. If it's he's going somewhere else, then that's a different conversation, though it still applies obviously in any trade. But yeah, I mean, Ingram's a name that's grown on me. My fear with Ingram is I don't think he's quite good enough defensively for what they need. I think he slipped a little bit on that end, and he has like the profile of that type of wing stopper, but he has not been that in several years. So I guess you could compare him to like a Jeremy Grant in that sense. Of course, he's a better player. He's a better offensive player, more talented, better ball handler, playmaker, shot creator, etc. But like in terms of the defensive profile, that's my one concern with Ingram is like, if you go for Ingram, you are building your front court around Ingram, LeBron, AD. And I like that in theory, but that is a lot on Ingram defensively. And he's also, I think, in that like mid 30s range. So it is you can get there with, I guess, Rui and D'Lo, but also not sure what the draft capital would be. Is it a first? Is it no draft capital? Is it a couple seconds? That isn't as clear to me. But I like Ingram, and that as a potential fit certainly is possible. But to your point, like Brooklyn could get involved. I think if Cam Johnson's involved, they're going to want draft capital back. And they're not just going to like, I don't think they would throw in, to be clear, I don't think they'd throw in Cam Johnson or DFS and not get back something substantive, excuse me. Okay. Jovan, are there too many voices in the discussion when it comes to trades? Jeannie and her brothers, Rob and the Rambi. This is an interesting one. I would say yes and no, because on the one hand, I think there are a lot of important voices and stakeholders in the situation. I think you could throw in LeBron. Maybe doesn't carry as much weight as he used to, but certainly is going to be consulted on any big decisions, especially with the roster. I guess to an extent, Rich Paul, though he's more so representing LeBron and AD. So maybe we just combine LeBron, AD, and Rich Paul into like one voice there. So yes, there are a lot of important voices in the discussion. I would counter with like, so I've talked about it before, like I previously covered the Clippers, and they had like a much deeper front office than the Lakers did in terms of like 5 to 7 decision makers within the front office. And that was to say nothing of what the star players wanted, what the coaching staff wanted, what Steve Ballmer wanted. So I would say on the one hand, like the Lakers do have a smaller front office compared to the average front office, at least in terms of like the head, like top decision makers. But at the same time, you have a couple people in that the front office are the Bus brothers, and they're obviously part owners of the team. You got Rob, who is both GM and VP of basketball ops, and then you have the Rambises, who are advisors and close with Jeannie. So there are a lot of, and then again, that's not even mentioning Rich Paul and they've talked about JJ having a say in some of this. So like, there's a lot of voices. I don't want to say there's not, but ultimately, I think it's like Jeannie is going to call the ultimate shots, and I think she's given Rob a lot of autonomy, and he is the number 2 here in terms of making these decisions. But Jeannie is ultimately the shot caller, and so I think that they've shown like they can execute big moves in terms of getting LeBron, getting though that was partly a different front office, but getting AD and the 2023 trade deadline. So like, I'm not worried about their ability to execute. I do wonder if there's a maybe being pulled in multiple directions of like keeping the picks versus trading the picks versus like a half measure. And that I can't tell you what each voice is saying, but I'm sure on some level there's maybe some disagreement as to like how aggressively to use the picks and how aggressive to be with that. I think ultimately though it comes down to what Jeannie and Rob want and how they view the direction of the team and what that vision ultimately is in terms of the rest of this season, the rest of the LeBron AD era, the next era of Lakers basketball, how they view kind of the big map of like the rest of the 2020s and then going from there. Kane Carter. Kane Carter always asks the good personal questions. What's your fave fast food spot? As a Californian, as an Angelino, I feel like I am obligated to say In-N-Out. What I will say is I like Shake Shack better than In-N-Out, and it pains me. But I would throw in my big four. My Mount Rushmore would be Chipotle, which depending on how you view it is fast food or not. Chick-fil-A, Shake Shack, and In-N-Out. Those are my big four, with El Pollo Loco as an honorable mention. Of course, McDonald's is a classic, but I wouldn't quite put it up there. And I will say Whataburger. There might be some Texans in here, but Whataburger versus In-N-Out, no competition. In-N-Out. Brian Brooks, Robert Williams for Gabe Vincent and JHS / Cam Johnson for D'Lo and Jackson Hayes. What are your thoughts on this? So you did not put in draft capital. I think that would swing how I view both of these trades, but on paper, I like both of them. Robert Williams it's a bit of a risk because of the injury history, but I think he's a guy who, like, of all the guys, because people glowingly talk about the 2020 team and that identity, and I totally get it. I think of all the guys that have been rumored, Robert Williams is the one that probably fits the closest to, like, that JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, just eye-popping length and athleticism and shot blocking, and, like, just feeling that, like, physical front court presence next to AD. I think Robert Williams and AD would be an incredible defensive combination. So I would certainly be open to that. I would give up I'd probably give up a lottery protected first for Williams. I'm not quite sure on unprotected. I think that might be a little bit too much for my appetite. Cam Johnson, I would give up an unprotected first for. I would even throw in a second or two to make it work. And I think I said earlier, Walker Kessler and Cam Johnson are probably my two top trade targets. I think Walker Kessler is healthier than Robert Williams and has a cheaper contract, a little bit younger, and statistically is probably a little bit of a better rim protector. So for that, a better rebounder too. Like, I think Walker Kessler is better. I'd prefer Walker Kessler, but the price is probably significantly higher. Utah's wanted 2 firsts for him. You might be able to get Robert Williams without even giving up a first. So I would, from like a value perspective, you could argue Robert Williams being cheaper in the draft capital sense makes him maybe more realistic. So, but on paper, I would do both of these trades. Schmidt K, Originals, Yo Buha. How much say does JJ have? Was telling the media point blank, we need a big bruising center, a power play on his part. I liked it personally. Well, JJ's kind of like, to your point, if you look at some of his comments, he's really gone out of his way. Like that, this was one thing that some players did last year, of complimenting the opposing coaching, which I think could be interpreted as pseudo shots at Darvin last year, when they would rarely compliment Darvin, but then they'd go out of their way after a game to go compliment the opposing coach, kind of unprompted. Like we never ask, what do you think of the opposing coach? Like the one exception was asking LeBron about Ty Lue, but that's because of their history and whatnot. But like we don't ask, like, give us a quote about the opposing coach. Like that's often unprompted. So like players will sometimes do that. I think JJ has kind of done that with the roster of he constantly goes out of his way to compliment the defensive playmakers on an opposing team, like a Dyson Daniels, a Lou Dort. There's been other guys he's done, but he's constantly kind of talking about, oh, well, they have this one defender that, we have to scheme for and adapt our offense to account for. And like, he's constantly talking up that player. To your point, obviously mentioned the big bruising center over the summer, also alluded to it at media day. So I think JJ's been vocal about some of his, he's also at times taking shots at the defense and the roster in terms of being like, we don't have stoppers. We need to be more of a team defense. So like JJ is kind of hinted like we need a better backup five and we need more defensive playmakers and better defenders. And nothing has come of that yet. But I think if the Lakers address those two needs, or at least try to address those two needs, JJ's vocal pressure, and I'm sure behind the scenes has been even more direct. I'm sure that'll be a factor. I can't quite say like whether that's a swing factor or not, but JJ has been clear that he has a list of things he thinks this group could be better with. Leon G. Can Carter gathering these personal questions to get your security questions so you can take over your account, Jovan Buha? I hope not. This is how I feel. As Rod says here, Shake Shack tastes better for me, but In-N-Out offers better value. Could not agree more. If we're judging it, taking price out of it, just what tastes better, I think it's Shake Shack. If we're factoring in value, it's In-N-Out. I could get much more food for less than like the average double cheeseburger at Shake Shack. King Carter, did you hear what Jason Timpf said about Rob not having a real basketball philosophy like other GMs do? Thoughts on that? I have heard that. Jason and I have talked about that before on his show. It's a fair criticism because I don't have a great answer as to what Rob's basketball philosophy is. I think like if I say a Daryl Morey basketball philosophy or a Sam Presti basketball philosophy or even a Danny Ainge or Pat Riley, I'm kind of trying to think through, but RC Buford and Pop, like you kind of know what those front offices, even the Clippers, I think they've done a good job managing things. It obviously hasn't gotten them the results that they've wanted. You kind of know like what those front offices, what those GMs, what those presidents think in terms of basketball philosophy, the types of players they like. I would say I would love, if I could like wave a magic wand and get whatever answer I'd want. I'd want to know like, is the 2020 team that? Because interestingly, like they've gone away from that blueprint and how much of that was direct versus just kind of happenstance and sort of getting into, because the basketball philosophy since then have not aligned with that 2020 team. Really, it's been looking at role players who can score, who could take, I guess I would say if I had to pick, like he likes combo guards. He likes guys who, like if you look at some of the guys, he's like, Schroeder, Kendrick Nunn, Gabe Vincent, I think he likes, I think he leans more toward the offensive end, and he likes players who are kind of these combo backcourt guys, THT, so that if we just look at like the types of guys he's added, now he's also added Vando. Rui, I would almost classify as like a combo forward where he's in between the three and like kind of that tweener forward, but more offensive minded. So I think really, if you look at the moves over the last few years, like they've trended way more offensive than defensive, and it's far more about like skill and in your bag and like trying to alleviate the offensive burden on LeBron and AD. So maybe that kind of skilled players, scorers, those types of guys are maybe more of the basketball philosophy. But I think clearly the 2020 philosophy worked much better, and they've kind of gone away from that. All right. Super chat from Angelco Ezorad Rezo. And just as a heads up, I will be going an hour 30. So I got 10 more minutes, and it's a hard 10 minutes. I got some family stuff tonight. So I will be wrapping in about 10. Yo, thanks always for the excellent quality content. Jovan, what does JJ have to do to make sure LeBron doesn't take bad threes like the one he took near the end of the Kings game or like the one against Atlanta? To be honest, I don't think there's really anything he can do. I mean, he could show him on film, have a conversation with him, but I think LeBron has a tendency to take some heat check threes at the end of games. I think he's done that for several years now, and he has improved as a three-point shooter, and he's made several of those shots. I think sometimes we tend to focus on the misses more so than the makes. So I'm sure we could clip together some questionable three-point shots that LeBron has taken that he's made that we don't remember as negatively because he didn't miss them. But I think you could kind of have the general conversation of like focusing on it on film and trying to reinforce like, hey, time and score game situation. We want you attacking the rim. We want you running 2-man game with AD. And if they're going under, like depending on where the shot is, and again, kind of the context of the game, maybe this isn't the best shot to take. At the same time, he's about to be 40, year 22. I think he is who he is for the most part. It's largely been positive for the most part, and I think the positives outweigh the negatives with LeBron. But I also think like the shot selection late game sometimes is not great in terms of taking some of these like contested 28-foot threes or even open 28-foot threes that like maybe a little too quick on the shot clock or like based on the game and score context isn't the best shot. Now again, he's hit plenty of them. He's improved as a shooter, so I think that would probably be his counterpoint if you pressed him on this. But I think certainly there's some of these shots I agree, could stand to take out of his shot diet. I would also throw in, as L.A. points out, like JHS seems to also be in line with Rob and the type of players he likes in terms of those kind of combo scorers. Yusupang, basketball, Brogdon, Jonas for D'Lo, Gabe, and Wood. I've said I'm not big on Jonas because of the defense. I guess you're not giving up much in terms of like, I mean, you still have Jackson Hayes, although he's not great defensively either. So I'm not as into Jonas. I'm actually not personally as into Brogdon either. So I'm kind of out with trading with Washington to be honest. Like, I guess Kuzma's the one guy I'd potentially be interested in depending on the price. If you could do this trade without giving up a first, I guess I would consider it. But if the cumulative value of Jonas and Brogdon is like a first, I don't think I would do that. I think if you could do this for like a couple seconds, I consider it again. But I think D'Lo is arguably better than Brogdon, and Brogdon has a really extensive injury history at this point. I know like defensively he's better than D'Lo. He's also a big body, but I'm not as sold on Brogdon as some people are personally. McDonald Gibson, who'd you target if you were the GM? I would send JHS and a first, and I would stop short of so backtrack. Lakers have 2 firsts they can trade. They have 3 first-round pick swaps, and they have if we're talking about like the maximum they could trade of everything, 2 firsts, 3 pick swaps, 5 second-round picks. So I would try to fight trading or pick swapping 26 and 28, because I think there's less clarity as to where they'll be in 26 and 28 with LeBron, with AD, etc. So I would potentially be open to pick swapping the 2030 pick, but I would try to do something along the lines of stopping short of 2 firsts for Walker Kessler, but I would put a first on the table for Walker Kessler with JHS, and I would say if you want a 2030, ideally maybe you can take away the top 4 protection from 2027 that you owe Utah already. If that's too rich for your blood, or Utah, that doesn't really do it for them, I would consider a 2030 pick swap. That's like the most I'd be willing to give up in terms of additional draft capital. If not, then I'd try and throw in like a couple seconds to go get Walker Kessler. It's maybe a slight overpay, but you are locking in a 23-year-old who's been a double-double, 60% shooting, elite rim protector, still on his rookie deal. Like, I think that's a player who could help you now as either a starter or backup 5, but also be a longer-term piece that you continue to kind of have in the next era of basketball. Then I would try to do something along the lines of D'Lo, I guess D'Lo and Gabe, or D'Lo and a couple of the minimum guys for Cam Johnson. You have to give up a first as well, and maybe another second or 2. You might have to extend it into a 3-team deal, at which point all the sides have to be touching. So maybe you also put in another second to like the 3rd team to help facilitate it. But some type of deal there. I would try to keep one of Gabe and D'Lo just to have as like your backup guard, so you don't have to go find that guy. Because you could make it work with D'Lo and Gabe. That's probably the easiest way. I would try and fight to see if at that point, if it's like Christian Wood and Cam, you're probably not even getting there financially. So it probably has to be Gabe and D'Lo. I would then, I guess you're creating a roster spot. You could go sign someone, but I mean, as we talk through it, it's not like, I'm not saying it's easy to improve this team, but I think Cam Johnson and Walker Kessler are probably the 2 best players that the Lakers could get in terms of value and fitting a need. It would require both firsts, would probably acquire 2 to 4 seconds, but between the 2, and would probably require JHS, D'Lo, and Gabe. But you get bigger, you get better defensively, you get a legitimate elite shooter around LeBron and AD, you get an elite rim protector, and I think you plug a couple holes in the rotation, and you still, depending on how many second-round picks you gave up, you still have some flexibility of, if all of a sudden now you feel like Rui's expendable, or even with a smaller scale with a minimum guy, if you want to attach a second or 2 to go get an upgrade in the backcourt, some guy who's like the 3rd string point guard or the 5th guard on a team that's not really playing and making minimum or pretty low salary, you could go get that guy as well. So I think now you could also say Dorian Finney-Smith, Bruce Brown. I think those would be the other 2 guys I would consider after Cam Johnson, but I would probably say Kessler and Johnson are my top 2. Kane Carter with another personal one. Jovan, what type of kid were you like in high school? The nerd, the jock, the heartthrob, loner, the troublemaker? I was in between. I would say, I would say partly a jock because I played basketball all 4 years. So basketball was a big part of the high school life. I finished second in homecoming king voting. So I think, so I'd say I was kind of popular. Not that homecoming king is the end all be all, but I guess I was a little popular. So somewhere between, but I also got good grades. So I would say some cross of like kind of popular, kind of nerdy, also very jockey and very much leaning into the basketball side. Got a super chat here from Kevin Brown. I guess I missed a couple. Major Level Entertainment. Great show. Love your content. Please shout out the Lakers in 5 and Major Level Entertainment. Keep up the great work, Jovan. Thank you. And thank you for the great question coming on. Appreciate you. And Kevin Brown, any chance Kyrie would leave Dallas if Braun would take less next year? There's always a chance, but I think they got a good thing going in Dallas, and it seems like that ship has sailed. I wouldn't completely rule it out, given the I would say like improved relationship between LeBron and Kyrie over the last few years. But LA had a chance to go get Kyrie when he was still in Brooklyn. They didn't, and I think that's he's probably in the right situation for him, where it's a good team. He doesn't have to be the guy. He can still be the number 2 guy. It's a big market, but it's not like he's not going to have the same pressure that he had in terms of if he played in LA or even playing in Boston or playing in even Brooklyn, though it's a big market, obviously being New York, but it doesn't get the same level of like scrutiny or whatever as a Boston or LA, but it's still a big market, and he's still with KD, with Harden. So there was a lot of attention there, but he's kind of in a smaller situation from a media perspective, a scrutiny, criticism perspective. So I think he's set up pretty well. So I think Kyrie's probably staying there. I just hit the hour 30 mark, so I will take like 2 more questions quickly, and then I will pop out. Sky Falcon 5, Jovan got it all hot. No, I mean, I'll say I never had I've always been skinny, so I guess never had like I've always wanted muscle, like big muscles. So that's something I've not had. Dark Galaxy, thoughts on Keon Ellis? I would like Keon Ellis, and especially if he, depending on the price, like I don't think he costs you a first. So maybe that's like a second move for the Lakers of like, honestly, an interesting one off the top of my head. I don't know what his salary is. I will quickly look it up, but like, I think a guy who could really help the Kings. Oh yeah, he's making like he's making 2.1, and but a guy quickly off the top of my head that would help the Kings, I think, is actually Cam Reddish. They don't have a lot of perimeter defense, those types of wings. So if you can go out and get a Cam Johnson, a DFS, a Bruce Brown, and help boost your perimeter defense and then maybe Vando comes back and Cam is a little bit more expendable. If you already gave up D'Lo and Gabe, and you need just kind of another backup ball handler, just backcourt depth, you could trade maybe Cam and like a second for Keon Ellis or something like that. And financially, it works. Lakers are actually shedding money in that deal, and maybe something like that. Although maybe you could also argue just having that extra wing defender insurance. But I like Keon Ellis. I will say he didn't really impress me across this Kings homestand, but I think he has been better in the past. So L.A. I did not get your email. I will double check it about the internship. Then I will. I'll end on this one from Adam. How did you become a Lakers fan? Well, I grew up in LA, grew up a little bit north of the Valley, really technically the northernmost part of LA County in Agora Hills. And I got into basketball like 3rd, 4th grade. I was about 8. And that happened to coincide with a duo called Shaq and Kobe, and them having just won their first championship. So the first first year I really followed the Lakers was the second championship season. And I remember like looking in the newspaper to find out like when the first preseason game was, what time it was, what channel it was. And like, so back then that was when they'd go to Hawaii for preseason. And so I think they played the Warriors, what was the first preseason game that year. So I remember watching that. It was like the Anton Jameson Warriors and watching Lakers Warriors in Hawaii. And from that point on, I was just hooked. So that the 2001 season was the first season I watched. And being a bigger kid, I was drawn to Shaq as a like player archetype. Never grew to be 7'1" or 300 and however many pounds he was. But definitely Shaq and Kobe was the formative years. And then from that point on, became obsessed with basketball and was a big Lakers fan until I started covering the NBA in like 2010. And then I had to kill the fandom. But on that note, I will wrap here. I do have some family stuff to attend to. I appreciate you all for watching and listening. This was fun. I'm glad we brought some people on for future streams. I'm not post game. The window's a little bit tighter. I think I might keep it to just these more weekly live streams, but maybe I'll test it out for post game. I do think probably got to keep it a little tighter in terms of 2-3 minutes tops in terms of like kind of the back and forth. And I can yap, so I know I got to hold myself to that too. But this was fun, and I hope for those of you that popped on camera, I hope you enjoyed it. And I will say for future streams, like if you want to do it, like let me know in the comments, and then also you can just make sure you're in an environment where you can be on camera. It's relatively quiet, and first few people, no one said anything to get me in trouble, which was nice. That's kind of the barometer that I'm looking for. So that was fun. That was cool. And hopefully we can continue to do that and do it at a bigger scale moving forward. But thank you all again for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. I'll be back on Monday night after the Lakers Pistons game. I will talk to you then.